Once upon a time, business as usual was often good enough. No more. Where we are going, good enough is dead. In a world where everything is connected, where everything is equally excellent, where performance is reaching perfection, there's only one space left to innovate in. You. Right now, you are a central point in the raging tornado of change fueled by digitization, mobilization, augmentation, disintermediation, automation. Well, the list goes on. Science fiction is becoming science fact. Think about self-driving cars or computers that can learn and think. The way we work will never be the same. The skills we need will be dramatically different. Winning or losing are now happening faster than ever before. So what's your response? How will you discover new opportunities in one of the most transformational times in human history? Are you driving change or are you being driven by it? Disruption has become the new normal. With change, it's always gradually, then suddenly, well, things really have stopped happening gradually. This change is exponential. Everything that used to be dumb and disconnected is now wired and intelligent. Cars, cities, ports, farms, even our bodies will be wired with sensors and will talk to each other. These game changers are also combinatorial. They amplify each other, creating a perfect storm of change. Quantum computing fuels big data. The Internet of Things fuels artificial intelligence and deep learning, which fuels robotics. However, anything that cannot be digitized or automated will become extremely valuable. Human-only traits such as creativity, imagination, intuition, emotion, and ethics will be even more important in the future, because machines are very good at simulating, but not at being. Yes, robots and software will do some of our work, but this will allow us to focus on things that cannot be automated. To imagine change squared, you've got to start engaging more with what might be, not just with what is. Immerse yourself in the immediate future, 5 to 7 years out from today. We need to go beyond technology and data to reach human insights and wisdom. Technology represents the how of change, but humans represent the why. The future is about holistic business model. The opportunity is to be liquid, to learn just in time, not just in case, not single improvements, but complete transformations, not individual systems, but new ecosystems. Humanity is where true and lasting value is created. We will engage, relate, and buy things because of the experiences they provide, because of their transformative power. The future doesn't just happen. The future gets happened. The new way to work is to embrace technology, but not to become it. The future is in technology, yet the bigger future lies in transcending it. Let's live and lead from here.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for setting the context of the conference. We now will move on to the first session of the conference, and the topic of discussion is business leaders. Are we having to rewrite our business plans? Let's look forward to hearing from the delegates themselves. Please join me in inviting Mr. Suresh Narayanan, the Chairman and Managing Director of Nestle India Limited. Please join us on stage, sir. I'd like to invite to stage Mr. Arvind Balaji, Joint Managing Director, Lucas TVS Limited, Chennai. Welcome, sir. Please join me in welcoming Mr. ISAK Nazar, Chairman, Manna Group of Companies, Chennai. Welcome you, sir. I also would like to invite on stage Mr. Muthukumar Tanu Group Chief HR Officer, Tafe Limited, who will be our session moderator today. So please give them a big round of applause. We have a very interesting session ahead of us, and I would now request Mr. Suresh Narayanan to please come forward and give us the keynote address. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's truly a pleasure and privilege for me to come and address probably the largest gathering of HR professionals that I've seen. It's like walking into a jungle full of lions and lionesses. So I'm delighted to do that. The first thing I would like to do is to do a bit of disruption, which is I will move away from this encircled space and actually go out and give my presentation from there. So that's the first disruption that I intend doing for the morning. Good afternoon again to you, and a hearty good afternoon to all the delegates who come in from Sri Lanka, from Bangladesh, from Mauritius, from Malaysia, and from other parts of the world. Some of these parts I've had associations with, very fond associations, and therefore I'm delighted that we have participants more than the shores of India. Since the morning, we have been hearing some very interesting presentations, some very interesting talks on what HR professionals need to do in a disruptive environment. And what I propose taking you through is just some thoughts. Now, I'm not myself an HR professional, so I'm a little bit like a goat amongst all the lions who are here. But I have been a close watcher of the HR profession, have been a champion of the HR profession, and I've always tried to make human resources as a centerpiece of all that I have tried to do along with my teams as part of businesses. It's important, and the first message that I would like to give to you, as HR professionals, you need to invite yourself to the table. You will not get it on your own. Unlike some other functions and some other businesses will, you have to invite yourself to the table. And what is it that you can do is what I would put my thoughts to in the next 40 to 45 minutes. So this is the environment. The environment obviously is very colorful. It's changing. There's a dimension of change. The dimension of change is also in terms of the various hues of disruption that you get. It's also in terms of the various generational shifts that's taking place as far as this country is concerned. Obviously, disruptions take place at different stages, at different phases, and in different parts of the organization. And I'm here to talk to you more about disruptions that have taken place as far as Nestlé is concerned, because that's an important part of disruption that we have faced. Obviously, one of the key disruptions, I don't know why the slide doesn't come on, but if it does come on, has been demonetization. Now, this was done with a clear purpose, a clear vision, in order to not only remove black money from the economy, but also in order to ensure that we have a greater digital trust in terms of transactions. This is obviously unexpected, and we shall not debate into the details about why it happened, how it happened, and what has been the impact of what happened, because I think there are enough economists, and when you put in a bunch of economists together, it is worse than a pack of wolves coming together, because they will never agree on what has actually happened and what has not happened. But clearly, when you removed 86% of the cash flow from the market, companies like mine, consumer goods companies, suddenly found our consumers and our retailers short of cash. Therefore, the purchase cycles got affected. This was unexpected. Now, you can say, is this an incident or a disruption? Only time will tell. But it's important to face the fact that whatever happens shakes up the order. Disruption is any movement any motion, any act of significance that changes the way in which your course of business or activity has proceeded. It could be small, it could be big, but a disruption means an element of change has been brought into your environment. The competitive landscape for companies like mine has dramatically changed. Earlier, the concern used to be other big boys or other companies like Nestle. So you would look at a Hindustan Lever, or you would look at a Mondelez, or you would look at a Kraft. These would be the companies that would be in consideration to look at and to see how the landscape is being carved in terms of competitive intensity. Today, that landscape has changed. It's not just the organized, large, and old players who play an important role in the industry, but it is also numerous players of a local hue and dimension that have also joined the game. That obviously means that behaviors and actions, both for innovation, execution, planning, and management, has undergone a change. Today, even that revolution has gone into the fourth gear, which is the startup industries. No longer is technology, no longer is distribution, no longer is heritage the only reason why people choose brands. It's also the span of technology, the span of the digital revolution, the span of information flows has collapsed it, such that you can be based out of a small town, start a business, and make that business a disruptive model as far as the industry is concerned. This is good for the industry. Incidentally, disruption in this context is good for the industry because it ensures that everybody who's playing in the industry is capable of competitive intensity and capable of competitive propositions in order to sustain themselves. So the competitive landscape very clearly is undergoing a change for us. Digitization. I think the Digital India initiative that was launched by the Prime Minister in 2015 set about putting in three key objectives: digital infrastructure, digital governance, and digital literacy. We are well on that journey today. And in fact, if you look at the pace and change of the digital revolution in this country, it is dramatic. At last count, for example, only 3% of connections were landlines. 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, more appropriately, it would have been almost 75 to 80% landlines. Digitalization spurs the economic engine in this country. It's been estimated that a 10% increase in digital connections, 3%. So there is a significant digital plus that the economy, that organizations, that individuals can have by the process of embracing the digital revolution as compared to the analog revolution that most of us have been part of. So it's an important dimension. This clearly means if the economy goes through this, companies go through this, organizations go through this, departments go through this, and each element has to manage that process of change. Who makes that happen? HR professionals. You are the ones who are going to ensure that this process of managing change gets embedded within the organization. If you look at yourself, and pardon my provocation, as simply being individuals who are purveyors of benefits and compensations, you are looking at probably 10, I dare say 5% of your jobs. And if you excel at 5% of your jobs, you're not going to be, as was suggested earlier, the CEOs of your company. To be the CEOs of your companies, you will have to be involved in the core value addition for the business. And that is the management of change, and that is where you play an increasingly important role. We had, of course, GST, which has just kicked in, a huge benefit for the economy in the longer term by subsuming different hues and numbers and notations of taxes into one single system, making it one common Indian market like a European market. But clearly, this means that the whole process, for example, at Nestle, 150 processes have been completely changed, completely remapped. Distributors, about 1,600 distributors nationally, about 3,000 to 5,000 suppliers nationally have been taken through the entire education process on what GST means and what is the implication of GST on their transactions. The landscape has completely changed and will completely change. Who will manage these transitions within organizations? Once again, human resources plays an important role. If you take your role, ladies and gentlemen, as being operating business partners, you are in the game. If you take yourself as being business advisors, you are not in the game. You are not in the game because organizations don't need people with just advice. They need people who can also get things done. And to get things done, you need to be part of that process. And these are the golden opportunities. I think Mr. Pandeyarajan talked about it. These are golden opportunities that are coming up for the HR profession to be able to show yourself in a business light, not just in a light of being compensation and benefit and industrial relations managers of your organizations. That is important. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is only the sanitation check in an organization structure. The cutting edge comes beyond it. The cutting edge is after it. The cutting edge in how you're able to sustain HR strategies, talent management strategies, performance and appraisal strategies, reward recognition strategies into the core business strategy. Only then does HR become a business partner, not otherwise. Look at the dimensional change in terms of age. Organizations are being defined by it. By 2020, the average Indian will be only 29 years of age and will be the youngest country in the world. Compare that to Japan, which by that time will have an average age of 47. Western Europe will be 45. China and the US will be 37. Now, there has been enough debate on whether this is a demographic dividend or a demographic curse. The fact of the matter is that if the economic cycle and the development cycle of the country goes in the right direction, this can be a huge economic benefit for the country. Organizations are going through that process of rapid change, and I'll come to that because that is also an area where you as HR professionals play a very, very important role. So what have been some of the internal disruptions that my organization has faced? And I think some of them are well known. I will just talk about two of them that probably have been significant in terms of redefining and recalibrating the organization into a different mode. I go with this experience, and you will say that this is a strange man who's coming and talking about this experience. In many cases, a crisis is the biggest opportunity that organizations should embrace. A crisis redefines the way in which you look at yourself, in which you calibrate yourself, in which you measure yourself, in which you see yourself not just for the present, but for the future. So the first one, of course, was the Maggi crisis, which happened to us about 2 years back. It was like no other. A brand that was the most respected brand in the country, the second largest FMCG brand in the country, and also the most valuable brand, right? Went through the whole saga. That is not the purpose of today's conference, but definitely was something that had huge ramifications. It had ramifications in terms of almost more than 9,000 employees got affected. It was 8 factories, and 5 of them were shut for 5 months. So obviously there is a big disruption that happens. Those of you who are IR managers will realize that it is a nightmare. Even if you have half a shift being shut, you know the implication that you have in terms of your workforce. If you have 5 months of shutting down a factory with 4,000 employees who are sitting idle, it is a totally different kettle of fish. 400,000 wheat farmers. We buy a lot of wheat for the flour. They were suddenly, their life became completely different. Till yesterday, I was supplying a company that was buying in bulk, in certain prices, in certain qualities, and poof, it all goes in a single breath. Almost 6,500 of our field force. Till yesterday, they have been taught to sell. Today, they are being taught to take back, right? It's like an HR manager being told that instead of paying salaries, now you have to start taking money from the employees. It's a very difficult technique, and if that is going to be your KPI, the amount of money that you can extract from your employees, I think it's going to be a very different kind of HR organization that you can talk about. But here it was that for 5 months, the sales organization was actually taking stocks back. Not 1, 2, but 35,000 tons of product. Each pack is about 70 grams. So you can imagine the number of millions that has been taken across 4 million outlets in this country. It also had ramifications, so this went to our neighboring country, Bangladesh, because this was an issue in India. It went to Bangladesh, it went to Sri Lanka as well. And clearly, this became a very, very big issue. Almost 1.3 million direct outlets got affected. And these are all people who were making their money and were making their livelihoods on the brand. Apart from this, there were many hundreds and thousands of people who sell Maggi, who make Maggi and sell Maggi. They make a business out of it. And they were also completely and totally affected. Now, the whole ecosystem has a massive impact. You may call this a crisis, but a crisis then transforms itself into a massive disruption for small entities who then have to sustain their business in a new paradigm. But this is where I think what is important is the issue that Mr. Pandyarajan talked about. The purpose, the values, and the culture of the organization. In good times, relationships don't matter. In bad times, relationships matter. You know your friends from your enemies only when the chips are down. You will know your friends when you are successful, because everyone is your friend. Everyone likes to court, wine and dine, and meet a famous man. Nobody likes to meet an infamous person. But an infamous person can be damned and can be the victim of fake news and still be a good person. But that's when the relationships that are the closest become important for that individual. So obviously, the effect of this was much larger. It went across. I talked about Bangladesh, I talked about Sri Lanka. And clearly there are numerous entities, distributors, suppliers, vendors, right? Employees, factories, associates, people who are unconnected with this whole crisis get suddenly disrupted. There is a huge management of change that takes place there, and I'm very proud to say that my HR colleagues in the organization did a fabulous job. We didn't have one industrial relations incident. We didn't have one supplier going and making a shindig on television. We didn't have an employee making a noise anywhere. We worked with purpose, with dignity, and with respect. Managing a huge disruption is also a huge challenge. The organization stood up to that challenge. And I think that's the challenge that is there in front of you in small and big ways as you go forward. I talked about the changing workforce. This is a big disruption in organizations. Nestle is an old company. In India, we are 105 years old. Our brands are well known. The first sweetened condensed milk in this country was Milkmaid. produced in 1867. It's a very old brand. The first instant coffee, Nescafe. The first wafer-enrobed, chocolate-enrobed wafer, Kit Kat. The first instant noodle, Maggi. The first baby food, Cerelac. The company has had a numerous number of firsts in its category. Our factories first started in Moga in the Punjab in 1961. We engage today with 125,000 farmers, dairy farmers in Punjab, in Haryana. 66,000 out of those 125,000 are women dairy farmers. They're women dairy farmers. Long before gender diversity and equality and all this has become fashionable terminologies, the company was engaging with people to ensure that their livelihoods are raised and that women play an equal role. So today we have equal number of men and women, even in dairy farmers. I don't see that in this room today, and that's the challenge. I don't see that in this room today, and that's a challenge for me as well, because I would also like to see more number of women coming into the workforce and coming into the organization. Just this year, we did an experiment that has never been done by Nestle before. 60% of the engineering graduates whom we have recruited in Nestle this year are women. They are going to be working in our factories. They are going to be working as engineers. And I met them a few weeks back and I asked them, how do you feel? They said, we feel great. We look forward to working in this organization because we feel that women are treated with respect. And we would like to contribute to this organization because ultimately, my friends, all of us work for some money in our pocket and for some food in our stomach for ourselves and our families. Beyond that, we work for a purpose, we work for values. I can give you 1 million rupees more, but if you're going to work with a thug, you will have to think once again. This generational shift is such in our company that 70% of Nestle, which is a 105-year-old company today, are millennials. I am the doddering baby boomer who probably will be retiring in a couple of years' time. So after me, there will be a vacuum in terms of the baby boomer generation. It will all be youngsters who will be running this company. So that obviously means that in terms of gender, the way in which we treat, the way in which we manage, the way in which we induce the cultural aspects of how to treat gender in the company changes. Geography. As a company, we are represented in almost 200 countries. We are a multicultural, multi-ethnic organization. I've had the privilege in the company to be the chairman of Nestle in Egypt, an Indian in a Muslim country predominantly, having a team of French, German, Italians, Egyptians, right, and Moroccans as part of my management organization. We all wore the flag of Nestle. That's it. We never had any distinction in terms of where we belonged to, which God we believed in, or which food we preferred. I was a strict vegetarian in a country where meat is part of the daily diet. But it never stopped me from being well-fed and well-looked after. Nationality no longer becomes an issue. If there are companies here which are seeking to be global companies, nationality has to be thrown out of the window. You cannot keep insisting that it will be only this or only that. It will be the best person. That's more important. The best person. The best person coming from any part of the world should be part of your talent pool. Differently abled. We forget this. I'm sure there are some companies here, and I beg to be, I apologize for those whom I don't represent here. But for many companies, the differently abled segment of the population is something that we would like to forget. They are there, but somebody's taking care of them. We have started this in a small way within the organization to include more number of differently abled people in the manner in which we have them in our workforce. We discover that many of our sites are not even compatible with differently abled. Not even compatible. We have to make a big leap there. But it's important because these are people who can contribute to it. Who will make this change happen within organizations? Who will bring this sensitivity to the table? Who will make this a policy parameter to be considered at the management committee meetings? Human resources. You are the guys who are the vanguards of the company. You are the periscopes into the environment saying, sir, these are the changes taking place. So when we have programs on diversity, when we have programs on gender inclusion, when we have programs on managing women in the workplace, when we have policies that are changed in order to ensure that we have more number of women in the workplace, these all come from people who put their periscopes out saying this is what society is doing. Again, as was said in the morning, your eyesight and your long range is much more than the rest of the functions. The finance guy will think numbers, profit and loss and balance sheet, and that's it. Life ends. The technical guy will manufacture, ensure productivity happens. The marketing guy is more interested in ensuring that his product gets belted out in the maximum numbers. The general manager always thinks about it as a business perspective. Who thinks about the people? Exclusively about the people. It is the HR people. So therefore, it's an important dimension of the changing workforce that you will be part of. How do we do it in an organization? We went through this crisis. We are going through this generational shift. Change can only be engineered and can be made part of the organization if it is institutionalized. Part of the role of human resources is what I would call building the muscle memory of organizations. The muscle memories of organizations is short. It only restricts itself to leadership. So somebody is a very good managing director or is a very good personnel director for 4 or 5 years, everything goes well. After that, again, back to the pit. Right? Don't we see that in organizations? So we keep saying, "Arey, when that man was the MD, it was a great. When that man was the HR director, it was fantastic. Now it is all down." Because we don't institutionalize it. We don't build the muscle memory. So how do we propose doing the muscle memory for the organization? Cultural interventions. What we did was, when we had the post-crisis, we said, now let us look at ourselves and see what is it that we need to do as a company coming out of this that will ensure that we put in the seeds of permanent change. Change that will go on irrespective of the quality, tenure, or the caliber of the leader, because that's something that can keep changing according to circumstances. Most companies don't have a run of 10 MDs who have all been each better than the other. You will have one up, one down. Circumstances, situations, and positions will also change over a period of time. So what we did is, we have a simple model of growth. The simple model of growth is based on 3 parameters: on the consumer, on building in organizational change that we call the winning edge, and in order that we are able to progress, to simplify all that we are doing. The greatest task that you as HR managers have is to simplify your organizations. We are very good in making it more complex. Everybody loves to add 25 different processes. We reward people for it. Add 8 more templates and you get 3% more increment, right? Or you get 100,000 more of bonus. You make the organization so complex that even the person who's doing the activity forgets why he is doing it. So we create a generation of zombies, and then we say, why is it that the organization is not progressing? Why is it that attrition is high? Why is it that engagement is low? It will be low. If you make people into zombies, they will be zombies. So we have said that we will have 3 behaviors that we will measure people with: fast, focused, and flexible. You can't allow yourself to be caught in the same trap again and again and again. If you have to move, you have to move. Which means the way in which the organization gets structured, the way in which people are empowered, the way in which people are engaged is going to be very different. So we did this survey across the organization. We do a biannual survey. We put together a theme called Rise Together. This was an organization-wide, and it was only sponsored by the management committee. It was run by the employees. One insistence that I had was, I said, look, I'm not going to be sitting here and saying it's because of me, because of me, because of me. It's because of you. You have to be part of it. So there were 4 themes that as an organization, We will ensure that we learn from what has happened, and we continuously learn as we go forward, that we become a Nestlé that is more of a caring organization, even more than what we are today, that we ensure that our processes, that we ensure that our structures work for the business and work for the organization, not work because they are elegant or because they are very nice. They have to work for the organization. And finally, and this is what is important, and this is, again, I go back to the point that Mr. Pandeyarajan said so well in his address. Organizations are forgetting today the purpose for their existence. We are all here in this profit-making game. Make the turnover, make the profit, right? Keep the shareholders happy, keep X, Y, and Z happy. Yes, keep everybody happy, but why are you in existence? What is the values that define you? At Nestlé, our purpose is basically to ensure that people have a healthy life and that we contribute to their future. Our value is very simple: respect. Respect for yourself, respect for each other, respect for diversity, and respect for the future. The company's culture is based on respect. We are a respectable company, we are an ethical company, we will behave in this way. During the entire crisis, we chose to behave in exactly that same way. As decent, normal, middle-class people, not wanting to pick up a fight with everybody we see on the street, but to get our point across firmly, but with dignity and with respect. If an organization gets its purpose, business will happen. Great businesses today are failing not because of wrong strategies, some of them do. They fail because of lousy leadership. And that leadership boils itself down to purpose, values, behaviors. These are the things that affects us. Who are the vanguards of this in the company? It's you guys. You have to be the vanguards of it, because if you decide that I'm going to turn a blind eye, and some of us do, we say, okay, the chairman is behaving badly, but it's okay, he's the chairman. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay because that's not the purpose of the company, that's not the value of the company. So I think there is a lot that needs to be internalized. If you internalize it, you become a much richer, a much more engaged organization. Second, we have something called Project Harmony. What Harmony seeks to do is to ensure that all the initiatives that we take around gender, around diversity, around inclusion, work together for us as a theme. It's important because this is again embedded within the organization. It's embedded within teams. We monitor it within teams. Now, has everything changed? Obviously not. Are we better prepared for change? Are we better prepared for empowerment? The big theme that we have in organizations is, if you're a young person, nobody wants to empower you, right? You have to be gray-haired and you have to be 30 years in the profession to take any decision. Today's generation and tomorrow's change is going to demand that the young people today grow up to be leaders yesterday. That's how important it is becoming. So organizations which are going to be losing this thread and which are going to be geriatric in their thinking, or tenural in their thinking, or hierarchical in their thinking, are going to lose out on the changes that the environment is bringing, especially with younger organizations and with younger structures that are coming together. We also have a program of Nestlé's continuous excellence, to continuously look at the way in which we calibrate ourselves in terms of internal excellence and external excellence. So we have something called the Nestlé Continuous Excellence Foundations that talks about compliance, that talks about leadership, that talks about goal alignment, which fundamentally talks about compliance at the base. That's essential. And how that is translated then into value addition, and how that is then translated into leadership rules, leadership goals, and leadership attributes that account for a good Nestlé executive. We have advanced practices in terms of lean value streams, lean office, lean innovation, and total performance management. These are essentials, but these are increasingly simplified so that they work. Otherwise, you can have, guard books this big, right? 18 manuals of TPM. Who's going to read it? We all feel happy. We all keep releasing these big manuals at all our meetings. It doesn't work. It has to be simple. It has to be straightforward. It has to be online. It has to be digital. It has to be on your iPhone or iPad. That's how important it is, and that's what we are working towards. Continuous feedbacks and actions. We do what is called the Nestle and I survey. This is done biannually. It goes to every single employee. More than 60 questions are asked about how they feel about this company. Now, you will think that this is a survey, that nobody cares. Let me correct you. 99% performance or 99% participation levels at each of these surveys. Employees want to contribute, they want to know, they want to give suggestions. The important issue is how does leadership take all that feedback and translate it into actions. And that is therefore the pressure point that gets put as far as the leadership is concerned. You're asking the people about what change they want. Are you going to make that change happen? And that's why we are linking it to the Rise Together initiative on the 4 themes and saying all the suggestions that come in gets put into these buckets and then gets implemented. It has been my firm belief, ladies and gentlemen, that every employee has a purpose, every employee has a motive. The task of leadership is to ensure that this is distilled to the benefit of the employee and to the benefit of the organization. Every time you say us versus them, you're creating a chasm, you're creating a rift, and you're creating a platform where people are unequal. And it is this inequality in perceptions and inequality in recognition of the fact that talent is different. I keep questioning my people on training programs. You know, training program is something that you can either be cutting edge or you can be the worst edge. What do we train people on? We train people on what we say are weaknesses. Right? So behavioral training will say, I will train him to be more aggressive. If the fellow is meek and mild-mannered and mild-tempered, how is he going to become more aggressive? Is a sheep going to start looking like a tiger, or a tiger going to look like a sheep? But no, we will keep doing it. And this is where I come back to the famous quote of the philosopher J. Krishnamurti, whom Mr. Prabhu quoted, and I was privileged to study in the school, Rishi Valley, which he founded. He said, the guru is within you. The problem is we do not allow employees to either introspect or to contribute. If you introspect and you contribute, then you make for a richer organization than what you are. So, I have a few key messages. And I know that I'm not the HR specialist. I'm talking here to 900 HR specialists, so you guys can eat me for lunch. But I'm only going to share with you perspectives being more than 35 years in the profession. And living and believing that HR and people management is the core task of leadership. I've always believed and I've always said this. Line managers are as responsible for HR as HR managers are. In many organizations, the production manager will pass on the blame to the local factory HR manager. Sir, I can't help it, sir, the employee is lousy. The employee is lousy, who the hell is managing him? You? No, but it's not my job, it is HR's job. So you get carrying the baby, the bath water, the bathtub, the soap, everything, right? Including the towels of your bosses. If you allow yourself to be in that position, you have only yourself to blame. And therefore, I would like to leave you with a few key messages. Number one, disruptions are the new constant. The organization has to be prepared for this every single day. When we had our crisis, the first message I gave my employees was, I said, this can happen again. Are we prepared for it? This is like human beings. We are all successful human beings. Suddenly, in a peak of our lives, we have a heart attack. That's a disruption for us. It's a crisis and a disruption. Lifestyles change, relationships change, families change, perspectives change. But that's the reality. You can't run away from it. You have to cope with it. And you play a big role in making that happen. Second, disruptions offer significant opportunities. Look at a disruption positively and you will make a positive change. Look at a disruption negatively and you will sink. In the sea, in front of the waves, if you are going to be scared, then you will drown. You have no way. But if you say, no, I will overcome, it is like what the submariners say, the people who run the submarines, they've got a very nice motto. We all come up together and we go down together. That's what they are. And the submarine, that's a fact. You either come up together or you go down together. But it's so important how the organization embraces disruptions. And you provide the cementing block. You provide the blocks that come together. You provide the glue that comes together. Saying, let's look at a disruption positively. In my organization, the changes that I'm talking about has been orchestrated a lot by my HR colleagues. They've been the ones who put this together, and I have a very young HR team. In case you think that all of them are looking like me, no. They're much younger than me. Much younger than me, but they are full of ideas. The youngsters, they say, look, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this digital platform, let's try this training platform, let's try this engagement platform, let's try this health platform, let's try this talent recruitment platform, whatever. But there are interesting ways in which you can use the disruption as a significant opportunity. Behaviors are contextual and need to be institutionalized. Take good behaviors and behaviors that you want within an organization and build an entire structure of reward, recognition, of noticeability, and of promotion based on it. I know it is difficult. Leadership in companies is never selected basis this software skills. We always take the hardware skills. Production manager, what is the man hours per ton? How much of throughput in the machine? X, Y, and Z. Sales manager, how much of sales? How much of profit? How much of this? Business manager, what is the market share? What is the growth? What is the long-term future, etc., etc. When have we looked at the software aspects? Is this guy a good leader? Can he handle a difficult situation? Can he manage conflict? We have it as tick boxes. In all our performance appraisal forms, all this is there. Huh? It's all there. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that none of you do it. You do it. But do you seriously take action on it? If a guy is third rate in terms of behavior, but is a very effective manager, do you still promote him? You do. Because you say, oh, the business is important. Hey, sir, he's a kachara fellow, sir, but doesn't matter, sir, but he's still. No. It's all right. It's not all right. The future will show you that it is not all right, and you better ensure that you build the purpose and build the values and focus on these aspects. Because if you don't, then things will become very much more difficult, and things will become out of control. And then you can't do anything about it. When you have promoted a bunch of wolves in sheep's clothing to the top echelons of your organization, you will be eaten up by them. And when you're eaten up by them, there is not very much that you can do. So therefore, institutionalize the behaviors that you pick up in a context. Work on a few, impact many. The challenge of managing disruption is to have a few themes and work intensively on it. What we do is, we launch 35 new projects. The instinct is always, starting with the CEO. How many projects, sir, do you want? At least 10 projects here. Okay, 10. HR director, 20. Manufacturing director, 30. Right? Marketing director, 50. Business directors, another 100. So we have 345 initiatives that the company is taking place. Then we'll have follow-up. We'll have template. You know, the worst sin in this world has been discovered. PPT. PPT. PPT is the worst sin this world has discovered. We have stopped talking. So what we will do, we'll make complicated slides. Then we will present it in front of people like me. Then I don't understand half of it, but I have the ego. So very good, very good, very good. Finished. That is all you need. You will go to the 400th initiative. And the end result is nothing has happened. You have blown up money. You've had conventions. You've had good breakfasts and lunches. You've had motivational speakers from outside coming and telling you how good the world is, but nothing has changed. But your boss will still believe everything has changed because you will go and tell him that, sir, because of you, everything has changed. Right? Work on a few. Work on a few and impact as many as possible. Learn to accept. Learn to accept. I'm telling this to HR people, so I must be having some courage. learn to accept that people are at the center of everything. We have forgotten this as organizations. We have forgotten this as leaders. It is all mamadai, me. I have been doing this. It's not you who's doing it. When my company came out of this crisis, it is not me. It is 9,000 people who worked in this company and many, many, many thousand people beyond. They are the ones, and the consumers are the ones who made this company get up and stand on its feet. The day I assume that I am Parabrahman, I think it's time for me to go. It's important that as HR people, you find the building blocks to ensure that people become what they become. And every organization, every individual, there is talent. There is no shortage of talent anywhere. The question is, you get a musician to start to paint, and you get a painter to start to write a book. And that's when the problem happens. In organizations, we have misfits and mismanagements. So this is really what I wanted to share with you on my own perspectives on disruptions. I believe that together we can do great things, as indeed Mother Teresa said. Thank you very much for your time and attention.